Coming up on News Center this Tuesday night. Korea's sovereign credit rating risks being downgraded if Seoul fails to make structural reforms. This and other messages from President Park Geun-hye during her last cabinet meeting of 2015. South Korea and China holds talks over a sea zone demarcation line, a long source of friction between the two countries over special rights regarding the exploration and use of marine resources for the first time in 7 years. And there is still room for improvement, but it looks like more North Korean defectors are landing jobs in South Korea than ever before. We'll have the numbers. News Center begins right now. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those around the world. This is a News Center. Reform and restructure, key words from President Park Geun-hye today during her last cabinet meeting of the year. Now, also highlighted by the Korean leader, the absolute need for the economy to pick up. And in order for that to happen, the nation's legislators need to get to work. Let's go to our presidential office correspondent, Song Ji-sun. Ji-sun, another very strong message from the president during this final cabinet meeting of 2015, but of course the first with new members on board.
Good evening, Ganyang. President Park remained firm and consistent in her push for reforms. A day after announcing a partial cabinet reshuffle, she called on the new cabinet members to continue restructuring efforts and urged lawmakers to pass a package of reform bills. At the last cabinet meeting of the year, President Park Geun-hye noted how well the Korean economy has fared, despite the unfavorable condition at home and abroad, citing Moody's recent decision to raise Korea's credit rating to AA2, the country's highest ever. She went on to say that in order to keep the momentum going, the current efforts to revive the economy must continue.
무디스는 한국이 지금 추진하고 있는 구조 개혁과 경기 활성화가 성공할 것이라고 믿고 이러한 신뢰를 바탕으로 신용 등급을 상향한다고 명시적으로 밝혔습니다. 이것은 구조 개혁이 후퇴하면 신용 등급을 다시 하향할 수 있다는 경고 메시지이기도 합니다.
To that end, she said that a package of bills on labor market reform and the service sector that are currently pending at the National Assembly must be passed as soon as possible. With lawmakers' attention focused on a redistricting bill ahead of a general election in April, the bills are in danger of being put off until next year.
중소기업인들까지 하루빨리 경제 활성화와 노동개혁 법안을 국회에서 통과시켜 줄 것을 간절히 호소하는 것을 들으면서 대통령으로서 참으로 안타까웠고 그분들이 얼마나 힘이 들까 하는 생각에 마음이 아팠습니다. 대한민국의 미래는 결코 저 개인, 대통령의 것도 아니고 정치권의 이득과 실리보다 더 중요한 것이 국민 경제 살리기와 국민의 안전입니다.
In addition to economic reforms she laid out at the meeting, President Park also pointed to a bill on restructuring universities. She said schools must merge and adjust their enrollment quota to reflect an ongoing decline in the youth population while also addressing the mismatch between the number of graduates in certain fields and the demand from employers. Kwon-young?
Right, many issues covered at the cabinet meeting today, but once again topping the president's agenda, calling on the nation's lawmakers to put aside their differences and get to business. Our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-sun from the top office. Thank you, Ji-sun. Now, the president's call on Korea's lawmakers may have been on the swift approval of pending bills, but the nation's legislators had other issues on hand in parliament today. The two main rival political parties responded strongly to former main opposition co-chair's announcement that he will create a new party ahead of the general elections in April. Our parliamentary correspondent Kim Myung-gil is at the National Assembly. Now, Myung-gil, some mixed reactions, I would imagine, to the ex-NPAD co-founder's latest announcement.
Kwon-young, the ruling Saenuri Party remains wary of former opposition party co-chair Ahn Cheol-soo's decision to create a new reform-minded party. But on Tuesday, floor leader Gwangju-Daegu urged him to focus on two things he characterized as the essence of political reform.
Lawmaker Ahn Cheol-soo has vowed to launch a new party with an emphasis on reform. But true reform lies in improving people's lives and creating new jobs. We urge Ahn to stop wasting time by trying to win political gains and instead help us pass urgent livelihood bills.
Ahn, who co-chaired the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy last year, quit the party earlier this month after current party chair Moon Jae-in rejected his proposal for a leadership change. Moon said Tuesday the MPD would instead work to transform itself ahead of the upcoming general election in April.
Our party should take this opportunity to look back on what we've done wrong. We must go through a painful transformation. We must continue reforming our party and achieve unity among our members. We must follow our principles in order to win in the upcoming elections.
Moon said the public no longer wants an opposition party in turmoil, but a party that is strong enough to challenge the current administration. In the wake of Ahn's announcement, the main opposition party has some tough obstacles to overcome ahead of next year's general election, which could see the Liberal vote split between the MPAD and Ahn's new party, potentially delivering a victory to their ruling party rival. Kon-young?
Well, exactly how Ahn Cheol-soo's creation of a new party would play out in Korean politics and impact the public's voting decision leading up to the elections, we'll have to keep a close eye on in the coming weeks and months. That was Arirang News parliamentary correspondent Chi Myung-gil. Thank you, Myung-gil. Now, how well are North Korean defectors adjusting in capitalist South Korea? Their job figures, jobless numbers, and rate of North Koreans receiving basic living funds indicate that although there are still much room for improvement, the lives of Koreans from the northern half of the peninsula are improving. Arirang News Unification Ministry correspondent Connie Kim has the details.
Various economic data point out North Korean defectors are adjusting well to South Korea compared to before. According to the Unification Ministry in Seoul, the unemployment rate for North Korean defectors fell to an all-time low of 4.8% as of November. 4 years ago, it stood at 12%. This is slightly higher than South Korea's unemployment rate of 3.5% last year, but it still shows more defectors are finding jobs. Their employment rate rose to the 54% range this year, from less than 50% 4 years ago. Over the same period, the rate for North Korean defectors receiving basic living funds has been on a steady decline, from 47% to about a quarter this year. A Unification Ministry official cited a better job market as a reason for the progress, but also said that the quality of jobs defectors find could use some improvement. In addition, special bank accounts that aim to help defectors become economically independent are expected to help with their integration process. Some 28,000 North Koreans currently live in the south, with the majority residing in the capital city Seoul and outlying Gyeonggi-do province. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
When it comes to economic and people-to-people relations, Korea and China are on pretty solid standing. But what they do not see eye to eye on is the geopolitical issue regarding how much of the West Sea belongs to whom. Well, Seoul and Beijing restarted talks on Tuesday to resolve their long-stalled maritime demarcation dispute. In fact, it was the first such meeting in 7 years. That's where our foreign affairs correspondent Kwon-Soo was all day today, and she has managed to run back to the studio to tell us of the progress on that front. So it's good to see that you have managed on time. How did the talks go, and was there any progress?
Well, Kanyang, don't quote me on this. I can't assure you, but I would say that I think we're going to see numerous talks for the sake of talks. Now, first off, today's meeting was held behind closed doors, and Seoul's Foreign Affairs Ministry didn't reveal too many details. Now, Kanyang, as you said, Seoul and Beijing have different views over their overlapping exclusive economic zone, or EZZ, in the West Sea, which China calls the East China Sea. But the representatives of both countries did see eye to eye on holding negotiations on a yearly basis. So it's a forward considering how long these talks had been stalled. 14 rounds of talks since 1996, with the last one held in 2008. Then, talks stopped because South Korea and China could not reach a consensus. They only repeatedly expressed their own positions on their respective exclusive economic zones in the West Sea. That's why the resumption, or rather elevation, of the latest talks to the vice minister level for the first time ever was a significant step in nudging things forward. Vice Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol and his Chinese counterpart Liu Jun-min led Tuesday's meeting in Seoul.
The official launch of the meeting today has historic significance. Like the saying goes, getting started is half the work. We hope for an amicable, practical, and open-minded exchange of thoughts.
But as Vice Minister Cho told reporters after the meeting, this exchange of stances was only successful in setting up future discussions. The exclusive economic zone is important for both countries for securing more marine resources and energy. Seoul has so far demanded that the EEZ be demarcated by an equal median line from each country's coastline, while Beijing says the length of the coastline and the proportion of population has to be taken into account. Another major sticking point for the two countries has been their respective claims to Yeodo Island, a submerged reef in the West Sea. In terms of distance, Yeodo is closer to Korea's southernmost island, Marado, but China calls Korea's ocean research activities there illegal.
Maritime demarcation negotiations are very difficult. It's not a task that can be finalized in one or two goes. They are very technical, need legal revision and professional counsel.
This meeting that was held is the result of an agreement made during a summit between Presidents Park Geun-hye and Xi Jinping last year. Both sides view the issue as a key hurdle to overcome to maintain healthy bilateral relations for the long term.
And of course, so you meant EEZ, right?
Of course.
Yeah, it's a little tricky and confusing. So it looks like Seoul and Beijing only reaffirmed their differences during this meeting, but it's no big surprise considering how strongly they have been positioning themselves in terms of this conflict for such a long time.
Right, Kanang. There's a lot involved in the EEZ talks, as Vice Minister Cho earlier said too, because the two countries have to go by rules while they both want to secure their own priorities. And speaking of rules, the earlier 14 rounds of negotiations failed despite the two countries being members of the so-called United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea since 1996. Now, that's why the consensus is that the new rounds of talks will be going on for years and years.
Right. I guess we could take, some consolation in the fact that they did agree to meet again for talks because, it's been 7 years since they last talked and today's talks. So it's great to hear that they will be discussing this again.
And that's going to be annually. But I want to add that the talks are not going to be on a vice minister level every year, but also director generals will be meeting and other officials. So they're going to take turns.
Right. And this time around, it was significant because the talks were upgraded to the vice minister's level, correct?
For the first time, yes, that's
right.
right.
Well, let's hope to see that we'll see more tangible results in the next discussions and more agreement in the future. Well, thank you so much for rushing back here to the studio, and thanks for that coverage.
No problem.
Well, this could be a piece of encouragement for those battling cancer today. For years, cancer has been viewed as one of the most terrifying diagnoses a patient can get, claiming millions of lives worldwide each year. Now, in Korea, it's one of the leading causes of death, taking 1 out of every 3 lives last year. But as our Oh Soo-young explains, in Korea, advancement in detection and treatment are giving patients a fighting chance.
New figures show that more cancer patients in Korea are winning their battles against the deadly disease. A new report by the Health and Welfare Ministry shows the 5-year survival rate for cancer patients hit 69.4% in 2013. This means 7 in 10 patients are making it through 5 years, which equates to a de facto complete recovery. Patients with breast, thyroid and prostate cancer saw the highest survival rates, reaching over 90% on average. Based on the data, the phenomenal rates are due in part to advancements in early detection and overall healthier lifestyles.
For breast cancer, improvements in early detection have been effective, as well as enhanced treatments, including chemotherapy.
The number of newly diagnosed patients also dropped in 2013 from a year earlier. But compared to a decade ago, the number ballooned by almost 80%. In Korea, for every 100,000 people, roughly 285 were diagnosed with a type of cancer, exceeding the OECD average. The government says it's taking further steps to fight the disease.
We plan to link information systems among various cancer centers to compile a central database. This will help to develop effective policies. We also aim to broaden the scope for recommended screenings and improve hospice services for terminally ill patients.
In the meantime, the ministry is working on a 5-year blueprint for prevention, treatment, palliative care and international cooperation. The plan will be released early next year. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Well, speaking of advancement in the medical sector, a local team of scientists have developed new cutting-edge biological technology that may push forward and drastically improve current health diagnosis methods. What are they? Kim Ji-yeon reports.
Up until now, people had to visit the hospital for a checkup once or twice a year using invasive methods such as getting stuck with a needle to draw blood for testing. But now new technology has been developed that has the potential to forever change current diagnosis methods to something less invasive but highly preventative by utilizing wearable devices equipped with nano biodetectors.
A group of Korean scientists have developed a device that can analyze saliva, sweat, and tears and give users a general reading on their health.
A research team from the Korea Institute of Science and Technology says it can tell if a user is getting ill and how severe their symptoms are progressing by measuring the increase or decrease of chemical substances in their body, such as glucose, cholesterol, and lactic acid. They came up with a core technology for the biosensors that will regularly detect and decipher the chemical substances.
The sensors are made up of electrically conducive materials that connect the enzyme to a carbon nanosensor. The greatest advantage of the technology is that it will enable us to minimize the amount of resistance between the two materials by using enzymes innocuous to humans and enabling them to wear it on their bodies every day.
The researcher says the sensors are best utilized when attached to wearable devices like watches and wristbands and predicts it will take less than 5 years for the commercialization of the new technology. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
A 7-year-long renovation of a major expressway connecting Korea's southwestern city of Gwangju and southeastern city of Daegu is finally complete. With a brand new name and more lanes, the Gwangju-Daegu Expressway opened up on this Tuesday to drivers looking forward to smoother and shorter drive times. Well, President Park Geun-hye placed a bit more meaning on that opening. She hopes it'll bring about more unity and harmony between the two regions, which have also been longtime rivals in Korean politics. Shin Se-min reports.
A new name for an expressway that connects the east and west of southern Korea, the Gwangju-Daegu Expressway. Before it was renovated and expanded from 2 to 4 lanes, it used to be known as the 88 Olympic Expressway. The national project to revamp of the roadways which link Gwangju of Jeollanam-do Province and Daegu of Gyeongsang-nam-do Province cost $1.8 billion. The result is a cut in time spent traveling between the two areas, dropping the drive from 2 hours 10 minutes to a little over 1.5 hours.
물류비 절감액만 매년 760억 원에 달할 거로 기대가 됩니다. 또한 부근의 순천, 완주, 통영, 대전 고속도로 등과 연계되는 4통 8달의 교통망을 구축함으로써 지역 경제에 큰 활력을 불어넣게 될 것입니다.
The expressway first opened in 1984 and was used not only to connect the Yeongnam region in the southeast and the Honam region in the southwest, but it also served as a way to mend political rifts between the two. But in 31 years of operation, the winding two-lane expressway recorded some 770 lives lost in car accidents. Through 7 years of renovation, the expressway now has median crash barrier and safety facilities like slope and fog notification systems to help minimize possible crashes. The Transport Ministry says there are also plans to implement a fast electronic toll system for the expressway by the year 2020 to offer further convenience to drivers. 신세민, Arirang News.
Now, we have been concerned about air pollution coming from China, but it may not just be that toxic dust from China polluting Seoul skies. A new report shows Korea has become more dependent on coal, burning coal to generate energy, especially in the last 2 decades. So much that Korea has emerged as one of the biggest coal consumers in the world. Now, this as the entire globe battles climate change and working hard to cut back on the use of fossil fuels. This report from our Kim Min-ji.
Koreans are big consumers of coal. According to the International Energy Agency, the country's average coal use per person is the 5th largest in the world, consuming almost 2.3-ton coal equivalent, or TCE, which is a unit representing how much energy is generated by burning 1 metric ton. Topping the list is Kazakhstan, followed by Australia and Taiwan. While major OECD nations are adopting policies to eventually phase out coal and have seen their per capita consumption go down, Korea's has been going in the opposite direction. In 1990, the OECD average stood at 1.4 and dropped to 1.2 in 2010. Korea's corresponding figure came to almost 0.9 in 1990, but since then it has been growing more than 4% annually. Making matters worse, Korea's coal consumption is only set to increase further. The country currently generates over 27,000 megawatts of energy from coal, but the government plans to increase that figure by about 18,000, or roughly 2/3 more than what is being produced now by 2023.
Korea industry is heavily reliant on the heavy industry such as steel, cement, petroleum. That kind of a heavy industry requires lots of fossil fuels, such as petroleum, coal, especially. So that's why the percentage of the coal is really high in Korea.
But it's a trend the country will need to turn away from. Seoul has said it would cut carbon emissions by 37% by 2030 from about 850 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalents, or business as usual levels. Experts say the country's pledge rings hollow, so it needs to fall in line with other advanced countries and pursue cleaner sources of energy like wind or biofuels over the long run. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Eco-friendly, environment-friendly, animal-friendly. Many around the world have become nature-conscious in recent years, and that's reflected in the way we consume energy, drive, and in our diets as well. Well, that spirit has taken over the catwalk and the streets as well. Vegan fashion, upcycled fashion are among those efforts. Now, what are they, and how do we push ahead with the cause? Kind fashion, let's call it. Our news feature tonight with our Lee Ji-won.
Fashion is a stable means to express oneself. And amid the ever-changing and evolving trends, conscious consumers are now putting more emphasis on value and meaning in their clothing rather than choosing the latest designs.
부드러워서 그런지 진짜 같이 보이고. This is real while this is fake? Actually no.
털 잘 몰라가지고.
아 이거 사실 인조 부피인데.
전부 다 인조예요?
네.
동물을 죽여서 만드는 거니까 차라리 인조 모피가 더 낫다고 생각해요.
Artificial fur is no different from its natural counterpart, except for the fact that no animals are killed. This in turn is a pillar of what is called vegan fashion, which is increasingly gaining popularity and support from consumers. Traditionally, at least 50 minks would have been skinned alive to make one fur coat. But now, the same coat can be made without using an animal hide or fur, hence dubbed vegan fashion. At this fur shop in Seoul, an array of colorful coats and fashion items lure the attention of shoppers. And to the surprise of most of them, the luxurious fur used in all these products is artificial.
As many people know, the process of skinning animals is very inhumane. There are other ways to make fur, so without having to kill other creatures just for the sake of style and beauty.
With an increasing awareness on animal welfare, fashion brands have been releasing more products made with artificial fur, which in turn offers not only more possibilities in design, but also comes at 1/10 the price of natural fur.
I can't tell the difference from real fur. The design and quality are very sophisticated, and the item is even easy to wash.
It's very toasty and warm, quite suitable for the winter season.
As more people care about consumption values and ethical consumption, people's perspectives have changed. Now consumers choose to buy products that have more meaning and value rather than just fancy or fashionable items.
This new consumption culture has prompted more brands to come up with ethical products. This shop is one of them, boasting products with unique designs that have their own stories.
We come up with designs and ideas to give byproducts new values for them to be useful again.
Upcycling goes beyond recycling and uses waste materials or useless products into newly created items. Materials ranging from old-fashioned clothes to waste that have no commodity value can be transformed into almost anything. And they are all one of a kind.
I believe even my small contributions can help save the earth.
After its introduction to the country in 2007, the upcycling market has grown over $3.4 million last year and is now heading to the $8.5 million mark. And when it comes to upcycling, the possibilities are endless. The material for these bags is a 15-meter-long discarded fire hose. The polyester in the hose makes it non-biodegradable, but its sturdiness makes it an ideal material for backpacks, laptop pouches, and card wallets.
I wanted to become a firefighter just like my dad, but then I saw how much fire hoses are discarded and wanted to help solve this problem. That's how I started this business.
The marks left on bags and wallets are traces of fire protection, and a percentage of the profits from sales is donated to support the welfare of firefighters.
In the past, ethical fashion was mainly expressed by anti-animal fur movement. But nowadays, ethical fashion has evolved into a greater movement. The movement is that now consumers and manufacturers progressively search for sustainable fashion.
The fashion industry is now underlining ethics and sustainability as key elements for making clothes. And this new trend of kind fashion is only expected to grow even more in the future. 이지원, 아리랑 뉴스.
SpaceX has broken new ground in the private space launch industry. The company successfully landed an unmanned rocket upright after it dumped 11 communication satellites into space. Bruce Harrison is live in the studio with me. Bruce, the significance of this latest mission?
Hello, Kanyang. Well, the design of this flight could potentially save SpaceX a lot of money because the part of the rocket that returned to Earth and landed upright, the main booster, it can be used again in future missions, or potentially. There's some research to be done there, but this has never been accomplished before in the earlier days of the space age when governments controlled launches. Now, SpaceX's main rival, Blue Origin, did accomplish a similar landing last month, but that was just a test, not a commercially successful mission.
Well, Bruce, what's next for SpaceX, which is a company, of course, founded by the founder of Tesla, right?
Yeah, Elon Musk, who owns SpaceX as well. Yeah, he's hoping for some big things. Right now, they're just going to continue to research, but potentially this is going to slash operational costs in a very competitive field. And these days, at least for NASA and the United States, private contractors like SpaceX are crucial in space flight and research. According to the New York Times, Musk said earlier this year it would take a few years for SpaceX to figure out how to reuse rockets. The first step was safely returning one to Earth, and now they've accomplished that. SpaceX employees were very excited. They cheered loudly as they watched a live stream of the main booster descend and land safely. Musk also told the Times he hopes to eventually recover and reuse the second stage as well. He predicted that a fully reusable rocket, first and second stage, could cut launch costs to 1/100th of what they are now. SpaceX has plans to launch another commercial satellite into space next month and an ocean satellite for NASA. It aims to restart supply missions to the International Space Station as well in February after a failed mission earlier this year. The United Nations says more than 1 million refugees have now entered the European Union this year, and thousands of others died trying. The UN's refugee agency said the record movement of people into Europe is the result of an unprecedented level of disruption around the world. According to the agency and the International Organization for Migration, half of those arriving were Syrians fleeing the war. UN High Commissioner for Refugees Antonio Guterres said this week they can't be blamed for the terror they risked their lives to escape.
Those that reject Syrian refugees, and especially if they are Muslim, are the best allies of the propaganda and the recruitment of extremist groups.
The UN Refugee Agency expects arrivals to continue at a similar rate next year, but the International Organization for Migration said it's impossible to forecast numbers because of the Syrian war and border protection moves being made in the European Union.
Well, Bruce, another major concern all around the world this year has been climate change, and it looks like this Christmas is going to be a very warm one. I mean, record high temperatures expected in New York City for Christmas Eve, and in fact, all along the eastern seaboard, and some expecting temperatures up to the mid-20s. And these conditions aren't limited to the U.S., right?
Sure, we're seeing this in New York, the eastern seaboard, parts of Spain are predicting record temperatures, and in Russia as well. Moscow's used to a white Christmas, but there isn't going to be any snow on the streets of the Russian capital this year. Snow was completely gone from the streets there on Monday, and some say it's just not the same.
New Year should have frost, snow, even a snowstorm. This weather is unusual.
At least back in New York, you may want to trade your snow shovel for an umbrella because it's going to rain as well.
Wow, rain on Christmas Eve. I mean, I remember this time last year I was in New York and it was freezing that winter. I remember we had many blizzards, polar vortex, in fact, and a lot of snow. So, you know, this unusual, I guess, a flip in the climate, this should be worrisome, right?
I'm not an expert on climate change. Quite a drastic shift, though, obviously, snow last year. And some people are even saying you don't have to get out of New York to enjoy a sunny vacation this winter. That's how warm it's going to be.
Wow. I guess it will be a concern for meteorologists. I guess for the average person, I think it would be a pretty warm one, right?
Oh, it's going to be warm. Yeah, indeed.
All right, Bruce, thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
Well, it's winter solstice today here in Korea. It's called Dongji. So daylight hours were the shortest of the year. For details, let's go live to our Jihyun at the Weather Center.
Hello, Kwon-young. Yes, today is Dongji, and one custom in Korea is to have a bowl of patjuk, or red bean porridge, as it's believed to ward off bad spirits and prevent illnesses. And it was rather mild Dongji day, and thankfully, the levels did not get as bad as we thought it would be, but it was a dusty day. And poor air quality will continue tomorrow in the upper parts of the country, including here in the capital, so be sure to drink plenty of water and try to stay indoors if possible. A mix of rain and clouds is in the forecast for most parts, but only 5 to 10 millimeters of precipitation is expected, whereas here in the capital, we'll see light drizzle in the morning, which won't do much to clear out the air. Milder temperatures are in store for tomorrow, as the daily low here in the capital will kick off at 2. For Daegu, Busan and Jeju will start out the day at 10 and 12. But much milder afternoon highs, as the daily high here in Seoul will peak at 9 for Daegu as well, and Busan and Jeju will see a high of 14 tomorrow afternoon. Now, some of you might be planning to check out the first sunrise of the new year, and these are the estimated time for the New Year's Day. And for now, it looks like temperatures will be on the mild side on New Year's holiday. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the weather conditions around the world.
And that is our broadcast on this Tuesday night. I'm Moon Kwon-young. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope to see you right back here, same time tomorrow on NewsCenter.